Okay, so we're going. Okay. Well, I thank everybody for coming in today for the outside your comfort zone. I've always pushed myself outside my comfort zone, but I was lucky enough to touch base with Dr. Sam about at least a year and a half ago, probably when we were doing I saw you post about high intensity stuff, and I thought, wow, wait a minute, I know who this person may be. There's Heather. She popped in too. Um, Dr. Sam volunteered to come in and do some evaluations on how you're walking, on your gait, which I'd been through one session with Dr. Sam last year, and she helped me tremendously. So I got some issues, but I'll talk to you about those later. Oh, you can watch my IT band pop in my hip.
Ay, ay, ay.
When I go to stretch my leg out, it will just you see my shorts go, my shorts actually shake, and it's right above the hip socket. But Dr. Sam she explained to me a long time ago who she was and what she does, and she takes her job. It's not a job; it's a passion with her, and I know why she has that passion. And she takes it, as a lot of us take our recovery, very personal when she does stuff. And that's amazing when you get a therapist like that because they actually dig in deeper than what a normal therapist would. And that's what makes Dr. Sam so amazing. And she's so personal about things. And she doesn't just talk medical jargon. She talks in as a layperson, so we understand what's actually going on, and it helps a lot. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Sam and let her take over from there, and I'll just sit back for a little bit because I know I have to go pay a bill here pretty soon. Sam, I don't know how to, I was going to joke with you. I don't know how to say your last name,
Amadeo.
but your maiden name was a B, so you upgraded to an
Yes, Balistreri.
yeah, you upgraded to an A as I saw that. It's made with B, so you upgraded in the alphabet.
It's a little bit easier than the other name. Definitely easier to spell. Well, thank you so much, John. Me and you always joke, but that was very, very sweet of you, to introduce me that way. But yeah, I've been doing PT now for 7 years, and I was in the hospital, I was in rehabs, home cares, you name it. I work in pediatrics mainly full time now too. Um, and my work here and my work personally through NeuroThrive really reflects kind of the how I want to be able to provide services to people because I'm sure you all have experienced that there are some ugly things to the real therapy world and like insurance restrictions and time restrictions. And I mean, personally, as a therapist, when I was in rehab, um, it was hard for me to treat the way that I wanted to treat, tackle the things that I wanted to, and then I would just, my patients would be discharged, and I didn't know what happened afterwards. And most likely, the gains that we got were, lost because of the continuity of care is really not there. So really, that's why I developed my practice because I wanted to fill the gaps of the issues that I saw in the care that specifically stroke survivors um, go through. Um, Now, through my programming and through like these gait analyses that I do, I'm able to help people like you better understand what's going on with their bodies and in that way be very impactful when you are doing specific exercises and knowing what types of exercises are best for you, right? Because just think, say you have foot drop, you go, your foot is not clearing the ground. There could be a million reasons why your foot's not clearing the ground, and if you're looking up foot drop exercises, maybe they're targeting a different reason why your foot's not clearing the ground and not the reason that you're having difficulties with. So when I have clients who present to me with certain issues, we go through the why behind the thing that we're noticing, and also take into consideration like the huge things that you want to be able to do. So, for instance, John is like really into like exercising. So if something is holding him back from being able to exercise, he's not able to do the things that he wants to do. So we're going to figure out a way to get him there. In the beginning, we may have to compensate and do something that's, we're not doing it the typical way, but we're going to get him back as quick as possible and then also change things as we go. So there's never, this is your program and it stays that way. We always change it as we go along and as we grow. Um, and I was lucky enough to also work in the VA in their gait emotion analysis lab. We worked with veterans and did a lot of research, and we did 3D motion analysis with um, different motion capture software with biomedical engineers. So through that, I've really strengthened my ability to provide and perform gait analyses, um, which is a unique thing that you may not get in just your typical outpatient. It was something we kind of did special for our veterans too, specifically those with limb loss. But we had many a patient with neurological conditions. So with that, I developed this whole gait analysis thing to kind of just get a little taste, give people a taste of like what is really going on with their walking, give them a really detailed evaluation, and then provide some therapeutic recommendations where, you wouldn't be getting a full program like you would if you were to sign up for a NeuroThrive rehab coaching. But for someone like John, who like he is a go-getter, he knows what I'm talking about. I'm going to give him his program. He doesn't need the accountability there. He goes, he does it. This was like the perfect fit for him. So before we start talking about like where John is today, John, if you're comfortable, I would like to go through the gait analysis that we did about a year ago. You're okay with that? Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
All right. So let me see. Am I able to share my screen? I just need to,
I
I'm
just
going to request it.
there, wow, there it is.
Perfect. Okay.
I was looking for that earlier, trying to say how do I open that up, but I figured you'd yell and tell me how.
They have this nice request option now. This is my old logo. This is back when I first started. But this is the document that John received from me after we conducted our gait analysis with a little bit of a background on the assessment and like what a gait analysis is. Um, Kind of explaining that it's an in-depth evaluation of his walking, right? Um, all of my clients do receive an initial evaluation and they receive the information that I write down about them, which is kind of unique. I mean, I don't know if any of you have gone to PT and the therapist actually printed it out for you and gave you what they saw on you. I'm always interested. Like, I think there's been a time that I went to the eye doctor and the eye doctor like walked out of the room and like went over to the computer and like scrolled through my chart. I wanted to see what he was writing about me. So I take away that question of, what is she seeing? And I share it with you. So these were some things that I gathered from John and his initial evaluation for me. He presents with left-sided weakness. He doesn't use a device, no cane or anything for his walking. He's able to go up and down the stairs, switching his feet, not using a rail. He has pain and some difficulty with walking when he's first beginning a long distance walk, which improves with time. So, very specific here of what his main concern is that we're noticing some pain and issues with the walking, specifically during a longer distance walk. So, it's not a quick walk in the house, and it does improve with time. So, that gives me a lot of information about the type of pain or what could be causing John's difficulties. And then also when the pain starts to begin. So he was having difficulties at the 2 mile mark. Then some other things that I did find from just having a conversation with John was he feels like he has difficulty with pushing off of his toes, clearing his foot if he's going up a hill, which is different than if he's just walking over ground, some fear of his knee buckling when he's walking down hills, and struggling with the pain in his affected side quad and hip. So the front of the thigh and his hip. So with all this information, we discussed it for about 20 minutes before we went into a true evaluation where you can see here, we went through some functional movements and looked at his range of motion and strength. So these were all things that we were able to do virtually together, where I had John show me in the camera what he looked like when he marched, what did he look like when he went up on his toes, when he performed a sit to stand, when he tried to do a butt kick.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm sure when you go to PT in real life, one-on-one, face to face, they do a strength assessment, maybe kick into my hand and push against me, fight the resistance. I mean, to carry over that strength into a functional activity, personally, I don't think, and many don't think that it or know that it really doesn't carry over to true life function. Like think about how hard your foot has to push your whole body weight through when you're walking, right? Can I recreate that force when I'm asking John to push down into my hand? Probably not. Just if you weigh 150 pounds, can I generate 150 pounds of force to really test if you're able to do that? No. So seeing functionally what someone can do virtually is almost more impactful than me actually putting my hands on someone. So what John presented with was he had some difficulty with coordination. So I was seeing a difference between left and right while he was marching. When he went up on his toes, he wasn't weight bearing the same way, which is very common with people with stroke. So you may shift away from the weaker side, which if we're doing what I would call a bilateral heel raise, so if you're going up with both feet at the same time, you may not catch it. But because, your strong leg's going to compensate. But something that I can ask John to do is, can you show me how you point your toes just sitting in a chair so I can see what that range of motion looks like? So is he getting a full toe point when he's doing, when he's pointing his toes downward? And then I can ask for a single leg heel raise, which if you're having difficulty with balance, you're holding on to something, right? So I would just, ask John to hold on to something and see if he's able to do it one leg. So we could really see the difference between left and right because even if he's going up fully onto his toes when both feet are on the floor, that doesn't give me correct information about his walking. Because when you're walking, you're pushing with one leg at a time, right? Maybe to give me some information if he's able to jump or do a sit to stand, but specifically with walking, I need to see unilateral movement or one-sided movement. Now, this is something if you all wanted to try, a butt kick is probably most stroke survivors' biggest difficulty.
Mm.
Could be because of uh, tone issues, strength issues in the hamstrings, coordination issues. But a lot of the time, people have difficulty bending the knee backwards while keeping the knee straight. So we don't want to bend the hip at all. So it's literally as if like you're just standing and you try to kick yourself in the butt. And that hamstring is so important to have balance between the front of the leg and the back of the leg. Also to have strong push off and drive as you're doing things like walking faster, going up and down the stairs, controlling as you're doing different movements. So with John, he had difficulty fluidly doing this movement. So it's a little bit, but it was kind of shakier than the other. He's able to keep his hip pretty straight, but you can see that the knee flexion and extension was very, very taxing to him, where it didn't just go nice and smooth compared to the opposite side. Always comparing the strong versus the weaker side is important too. We want to see what normal function looks like compared to the impacted function. Then we were able to look at a little bit of range of motion and strength. We did things like looking at his feet moving up and down, moving his hips inward and outward. And then we did a couple of outcome measures that were really simple and easy to do over the phone as long as, well, over Zoom, as long as John had a correct setup. So we were able to do a timed up and go, which John scored about 8 seconds, which was below the it's a really good score. 12.5 seconds is about our cutoff for fall risk. So John's scoring better than that. And then also his 10-meter walk test, which gives us some information about how fast he's walking naturally, which was 1.3 meters per second, which is basically a typical amount. So John isn't at a fall risk, but does this reflect something that he wants? Is this reflecting um or is this giving him the function that he wants, right? So John wants to move faster, John wants to move better. He doesn't want to just be average. He wants to be able to do more. So this gave me good information that he's not a fall risk, but it also gives me the ability to test him again and see if he improved. So he definitely wants to get higher there, where 1.3 meters per second is probably a little bit under 3 miles per hour on like a treadmill. So, um, basically what we could do is once I reevaluated him, I can test these numbers. It would give us really good data versus me just saying he looks better or John saying I'm feeling a little bit better. Having those like real numbers gives us a lot of information. Some other things that we were able to look at were does he have a good base of support? So this is looking at someone's ability to be, to have enough um, balance between the left and the right leg. So if you have a really, really narrow, your feet are really narrow together, you're going to be less balanced than if they're really, really wide. Just think if you were like on a moving train or on a moving bus and you're standing, things get a little bit wobbly, you widen your feet, right? Or if you're surfing, right? A surfer doesn't surf with his feet together. He surfs with his feet nice and wide to gain as much balance as possible. So for John specifically, his feet were pretty much perfect. They were in a good position. Something that I noticed with him, which is very common with people who have stroke, is that there's decreased trunk rotation and reciprocal arm swing. So trunk rotation has to happen. I'm gonna just stop my share for a second so you can see me. When you walk fast, just think if you're walking normal, you're kind of just walking like this, right? When you walk fast, we want to like pump our arms and we want to move where our pelvis has to rotate and our upper body has to rotate. And with that, we want an arm pump, right? So you got to be able to do this. When we have hemiparesis on one side, the arm doesn't swing. So we may see this, or we may just be here, which for a lot of people will impact their ability to go faster. So someone like John, if he's restricted in his ability to do this, he's going to be less efficient the faster he gets because he's not using his body in the most efficient way. The way that we walk, the way that like we're designed as people, puts us at the most efficient way to walk. It's almost considered like controlled falling, where as you're leaning forward, your foot catches you, and as you're leaning forward more, your foot is catching you. And we're moving in a way that we're not using as much power as we need. But once you have something like a stroke and we have a change between left and right, we have coordination issues. We have to think a lot harder. We have weakness where our bodies have to work a lot harder to do things. So we run out of energy quicker and things become way less efficient. So for me to walk 100 feet, easy peasy, but someone who has a hemiparesis that isn't getting that nice movement of the trunk, I'm not taking advantage of that controlled falling where I'm like leaning forward and just catching myself quickly with my other leg. It's going to be a lot more fatiguing for someone. So noting if you have a difficulty with swinging your arm when you move faster or rotating is a really important step. Um, you won't see this if you're moving slow, though. I mean, if I were to just walk right here, you're gonna see like, are my shoulders moving? Are my arms moving? Maybe there's a little bit. But
Yeah.
if I were to walk faster, you see how my arms just start to kind of turn a little bit more. You start getting a little bit more of what we call dissociation or twisting of the upper body on the lower body, opposite of each other. So making sure that we have that. And if we don't have that, why? Is it because of the arm that's not swinging with us? Is it because we're limited in our trunk? Things like that can lead to difficulties with speed. So if John's goal is to increase his speed with walking or with running, and he's not having that reciprocal arm swing and trunk movement, that's something I would target in his therapies. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, it's everything
Thumbs
I've
up?
been told by the students I need to start doing.
Yeah. We're going to go through the student report too. I do have that.
It's not easy to incorporate that while you're walking though, because you're concentrating so much on walking. And wait a minute, I got to twist my shoulders a bit. Wait a minute, this arm needs to swing a little bit. It doesn't swing as fast, so it's slowing me down. And then your walking gets totally out of sync, and you got to stop and restart again.
Yep. So with all of these things, you'll see that. I mean, I'm sure all of you have maybe had similar experiences that walking before you have a stroke is a very automatic thing. Just like breathing, you don't have to think about it. It just happens, right? You just get up and you go. I'm not thinking step left, step right, where I got to put my foot, where I got to swing my body. But following a stroke, you end up having the act of walking, I like to say, moves from the automatic subconscious parts of the brain to a more conscious, thoughtful part of the brain. So it comes from what we would call subcortical structures in the brain, where this subconscious movements happen, to more frontal, where we have to really, really think about it. I have to think left, right. There's such a cognitive load where you have to use so much effort to really coordinate and think about what you're doing that that could even impact your walking. So if it seems really thoughtful, I see someone in their face like thinking really hard when they're walking, I'm thinking, okay, how can I make what they're trying to do more automatic? So I'm reducing the load on their brain, because if we're thinking too hard, it doesn't feel as comfortable, it doesn't feel natural, it doesn't feel normal, and you're just going to fatigue more. It's like when you have like a brain fart that like you just can't think straight, right? You just have too much going on in there. And it's like, ah, I can't get it out. So if we can just kind of get it back to a way that you're able to just automatically do a movement by maybe a cue that I give you, or um, say using a TheraBand, using different wraps on your foot, using kinesio tape. There's all these different things that we can suggest for you that could help with reducing the cognitive load, but also getting the movement and change that we want to see. So, for instance, like, say, for instance, I wanted John to get better arm swing. Something I could suggest to him is, use your glove, so that just in case you have difficulty with like wrist, like maintaining a grasp, use your glove and put a dumbbell in your hand. Now, when you're walking, try to swing the dumbbell. Keep the dumbbell swinging forward and back. Don't let that dumbbell stop moving as you're walking. Now, he's going to feel that in his arm, and he's going to really just focus on the dumbbell as he's walking. And it's going to become a little more automatic versus me just saying, make sure you're moving your arms left and right, left, right, left, right. And I'm just like giving all of these cues. It kind of gives him an extra cue of, brings a lot of awareness to that side because we're weighting it down. And just as you move, you're going to get a little bit more of like a pendulum out of your shoulder than you would when it's just your arm. So
Is
that was
that
something that go ahead, John.
the? I know some people. I know Winnie's and I think Musong. A couple of them still suffer from sublux a little bit. That to me, that really restricts that arm movement, and also you start moving the shoulder too much because you can't get the swing, and your arms droop down a little bit still. So I know when I try
Yeah.
to walk, I say, okay, but my arm feels like it's swinging across my body and not out here to the side.
Yeah, so when people have difficulties with subluxation and a lot of weakness in the arm, sometimes we have different goals, and we want to just make sure that we're protecting the shoulder in addition to trying to get um, an arm swing during walking. So something like to protect the arm. There's a bunch of different slings, not slings that are going to hold you here, but slings that are going to approximate the shoulder or bring the two joints together. So it's going to help bring the arm bone into the shoulder. So it's going to bring those two closer together. There's eSIM we can put on that during ambulation, kinesio tape that you could put on there. And a very common sling, a lot of people hate it, is the Give More sling. And the reason we like the Give More is because it approximates the shoulder, but it hangs the arm in a natural position. So if you don't have biceps tone, where the arm's up here and the arm just hangs, the Give More brings your arm into like this type of position. So it's not straight, it's here, while at the same time pulling the shoulder into the socket so that it is side by side. Now, there are some really nice pieces of equipment that if you were to go to the gym, or use in like a therapy center, that could also give you a little bit of work with reciprocal movement to get the trunk moving, in addition to the arm. So, for instance, an elliptical, a new step, an arm bike, these are all things where we can kind of get the arm moving while it's what I would call like grounded or stabilized distally. So at the hand, it's grabbing something versus just freely swinging through the air. Or we can just work on trunk rotation. So if we're worried about the arm, we could always approximate it, even use it in a sling just to control it during like walking work. Um, so we don't want to sling all the time because that could cause other issues. But if we're really working on trunk rotation and speed and the arm is holding us back, sometimes we reduce the difficulty somewhere else so that we can challenge other places. So, for instance, like an example that I gave before is when I was assessing heel raise. I may have you hold on to something because I'm not assessing your balance. So I'm going to make it easier for you balance wise so that I can challenge you strength wise. So holding on to something as you do a heel raise, just so I can correctly assess heel raise. So the same thing with the arm. If the arm is holding us back, it's not safe, it's uncomfortable, we're risking shoulder injury, we can put it into a sling during our work and work on your trunk and work on speed walking as we protect the shoulder. So that if, we start from the core, as we build arm strength and approximation in the shoulder, then we can kind of do it further down the line. Does that help with your like little suggestion, John?
Yeah, that's what I said. I just know a lot of times I'll get out there and I'll get walk. Say, well, let's get the arm swing going, but the arm is like coming across me. It's not staying out here because it feels like I'm trying to pull the shoulder through and still letting the arm swing. And I need to be pulling the shoulders back when I let the arm do the swinging. And I realize once I stop and reset myself to where I can get the arms back, and then also when the shoulders are back, the arms start swinging left, forward and backwards, not so much across, and it makes a
Absolutely.
difference. But you get sometimes you get there and you're walking, you get tired, so you start to hump over a little bit, and it's like that arm starts to come across. It's like no, back up here, start swinging out here, we're good to go. I know when I did my original rehab, I think it was like a skiing machine. It was like two hand pieces, two pegs to hang on to, but it went up at an angle and back. And as one went up, this one came back. As this one went up, this one came back. So you actually were this way. And you sit there and do this thing, but it was like at an angle in front of me. We had two pegs
Was
to
it
hang.
like the pulleys?
It's almost like a pulley, but it was not, they were in tracks.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that one, I love doing that machine when I was in rehab, but we didn't do it that often.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? A lot of these things, so I think that's part of kind of why I created NeuroThrive too, is that, you have these like great pieces of equipment. Sometimes you don't use them. Sometimes you're not going to therapy anymore. Sometimes you don't have a gym membership. There's got to be a way that we can recreate it at home. So we kind of use whatever you have accessible in your home to kind of get the job done because you don't need fancy equipment. I'm sure you guys see all over the place. People buy these crazy uh different like hand devices or fancy AFOs or like these crazy like body weight support systems and robotic treadmills, all this crazy stuff. Not necessary. You can
That's a
the most
probably treadmill is pretty expensive.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And a lot of the times these are things that's just not accessible even to a clinic. So you can get so much out of just everyday things that you have in your home. The biggest thing with this is identifying what's right for you, how we can recreate it in your home, and making sure that you're staying with a program, right? Because you could have all the fancy equipment in the world, but if you're not using it, it doesn't matter.
And you were talking about the
I
elliptical. The ellipticals is hard to once you go on your leg. I always get going on my legs and then start engaging the arms afterwards. But this arm would not want to get fast enough as fast as my feet are going. So all of a sudden you start jamming your elbow up a little bit. Then you start messing your your feet up, and then you got to slow down again and get things back in swing again. You get back to normal, and then you try to speed up a little bit, and you start messing things up again.
Yeah, and I mean that also has like a huge implication. I feel like we're getting a little off topic, but it has a huge implication with like what you're comfortable with too. So like when you do things on your own, this is like something I've talked about before in the past is like you'll be at therapy and the therapist is like, "Don't do this at home." And it's like, okay, so what do I do at home? Am I not safe? So it puts it in your brain of like, oh my God, am I not safe? I can't do things on my own. It goes into this like almost like victim mentality when like you are so capable. We just have to give you the tools of how to actually harness that capability. And you don't need those fancy things. I actually have a client who she's like a nomad. I swear, her and her husband travel all over the place and they go to Greece. They've gone to they're stationed in Ireland. They go to Belgium. They go all these different places and she brings like a little tiny therapeutic like kit with her in her backpack. And or we use her hiking poles. Like we use whatever we have in the environment or like you have access to really get what you need out of your therapy because as long as you're doing the right things that are right for you, you don't need all that fancy stuff. Um, like for instance, me and John did this in his basement. It wasn't like he was at Planet Fitness. I didn't need to have him use any fancy equipment. He was able to do this in his basement with me.
And then, of course, other past,
Um,
you said try rowing. Okay, fine, I'll try rowing. Try something different. Tackle
yeah,
something. I did, and I liked it.
yeah, absolutely. Rowing is great if anyone is interested in like trying that. As long as you have like the uh, the glove if you're having difficulty with the grip. You have to have a little bit of strength in the upper body, but the beautiful thing about the rower is that like really however hard you pull back is the resistance you get. So you can get very minimal resistance. So it's really good for a lot of different people. You just have to be comfortable and careful with getting onto the rower because the seat moves. So say for instance that was something that, what I spoke to John about trying the rower. These are all things that like I would give him as a be careful or like let's plan this out because if we have something new that we want to try, we just want to make sure that we're doing it in the safest way and that we're practicing it before we do it. So say John had difficulty stepping over something to get onto it and then sitting down deeply or getting up from a deep seat. Those are things that we can incorporate into his therapy so that he could prepare and get ready for trying something new like the rower. Um, but all good things that like, having a conversation about like what's most important to you, what do you want to tackle, is the foundation of kind of like how we're going to build something that's specific for you. So kind of going back to um John's original gait analysis with me, something that we look at in like specific 3D motion gait analysis, like very, very intricate movement where we put little markers on people and we're able to kind of create a skeleton that's walking and look at all the forces and blah, 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 all the fanciness. What we look at is really what we call joint kinematics, which is the movement at the joint, and joint kinetics, which is like the force that can be created around a joint. So, how much range of motion do we actually have? And then how much strength can we use around that joint? Which, within someone who has had a stroke, we can have difficulties with both of those because if we have tone or you just have tightness around a joint and we can't use the full range of motion of the joint, the strength there is going to be impacted and what we can do can be impacted. And then also if you have hypermobility because you've got a little bit of flaccidity going on, right? We have a little bit of weakness. So over the joint, we don't have as much protection or control, and how much we can really generate movement around that joint. So this comes into a huge play when we start looking at, for instance, John was having a lot of difficulty with pain. So, from a PT sense, sometimes pain happens because we're really, really tight somewhere else, and we try to compensate for that by getting loosey-goosey elsewhere. So if you're really tight, maybe in your hip, we may be overcompensating for that tightness or hypomobility within the hip by overarching the back, by overkicking the knee, or using the muscles in the knee more so than the muscles in the hip because we're restricted in the hip. So looking at the joint movements and thinking about like the pain pattern really gives us good information about like where is the difficulty coming from and then how can we attack that, right? So with John, I'm going to re-share my screen so you can kind of see what I wrote to him. It's a little bit technical, but for his ankle, these are some things that I noted with him for his ankle, knee, and hip. His ankle, so going through the gait cycle, when he goes from initial contact to loading response, his foot intermittently moves from dorsiflexion to plantar flexion rapidly, leading to a foot slap. So what does that mean? When you strike your foot on the ground, so pretend this is my heel. This is my leg. This is my heel. This is my foot. And this is the floor. When you strike your heel on the floor, your foot has to come down like this, right? So you touch with the heel, and then you go down to your toe, heel to toe, right? Heel toe. Everyone says heel toe. If we don't have good control of the muscles in the front of the shin, we end up slapping the foot. Okay. So this is when someone could either have foot drop or they have what we call foot slap, when we have difficulty slowly letting the foot come down and it ends up slapping on the ground, which is what John was presenting with a little bit, which to me shows that he doesn't just have weak dorsiflexors or the muscles on the front of the shin that control the foot, but specifically in what we call an eccentric type of contraction. So there's different types of contractions with the way that muscles work. Isometric, when you're just like holding a position for a really long time. So just think, if I'm holding my cup like this, my muscles aren't moving, but they're working, right? So they're holding strength in one single place. Then we have the concentric contraction, which is when a muscle goes from a long position to a short position. So, easy way to think about this is my bicep is going from a long position to a short position to bring my drink to my mouth. So it's long, it's stretched, and then it bends, gets shorter here to bring this to my mouth. That's a concentric phase type of contraction. Eccentric is the slow and controlled lengthening of a muscle. So if I were to hand this to someone and I'm slowly bringing out, my bicep is going from a short position to a long position. So instead, I can control this versus dropping it fast. Does that make sense? So if I'm dropping it fast, I can't control how slowly my bicep stretches. And that's exactly what happens with someone who has foot slap, is that muscle is contracted to keep the ankle up. And what happens is as the foot comes down, I can't control it lengthening and it slaps down. So for John specifically, I'm going to give him exercises that target the lengthening and control of that muscle, not just like using a TheraBand to make his foot come up quickly. So it's going to tell me exactly what I need to provide him exercise-wise and how I want him to perform that exercise. Some other things that we noted was that John had difficulty with pushing off his foot. So a lot of people have difficulty with going onto their toes. Could be due to tone, could be due to strength in the calves, could be due to just range of motion in general. But this is what we call the third rocker of gait, where we get that push off or propulsion. And that's usually what holds a lot of people back too from being able to walk fast because they can't launch themselves forward and they're just like lifting their leg to come forward. So this is something that John was having difficulty too, where he was having a hard time pushing the foot off. Some other things that we saw were that his knee range of motion was a little restricted. Specifically, we could see that when he was trying to swing his leg forward, where like we didn't see a good amount of flexion and extension. It kind of just like stayed within like a little bit of a movement versus a lot of bending and straightening, bending and straightening. It was maybe moving like this. And then when he was walking forward, we were noticing a lot of use of his hip flexors. So the leg was, instead of that push off or the bending of the knee, we were seeing the hip take a lot of the brunt, which, if we remember, John was dealing with hip and quad issues, right? So now I'm noticing that his hip is doing a lot of the work. His he's having difficulty with bending the knee, which means he's having difficulty stretching the quad. And then he's slowing down. He's not able to move forward fast. So that gave me like the woo woo, like the lights flashing, that he's probably really tight in his quad and he's overusing his hip. So this is what's going to cause his pain. So if I work on some mobility in his quads, work on flexibility, and then also working on recruiting other muscle groups as we're walking, we'll will rely less heavily on the hip and be able to recruit the other big movers during his walking. So with all that information, I took all the stuff that me and John spoke about together and I created his little recommendation list. Um, So these were the recommendations I gave him. John is very good at like knowing the type of exercises too, so I didn't have to be super detailed. If he wanted to work with me, we could have went through a very specific exercise program to target things like this, in addition to any other issues he had. But these were the things that I identified as his biggest areas of improvement where we would be able to reduce his pain and improve his function. So we were going to work on limb dissociation. So working with
Okay.
the knee working on its own, the hip working on its own versus it all working together. So uh, I wrote to him, work on strengthening the thigh and the hips with the knee and hip in different positions so that they're able to contract when the hip and the knee are in different positions. So we want to maybe do a squat, but also a lunge because it's going to strengthen the quad and the glutes in different positions of the leg, not just in the position of a sitting position. So this is why we're not going to just give you a sit to stand. We're also going to work on maybe a split squat or a lunge. Then some things to work on push off. So him really getting that speed back. So really working on his toe push off. So general calf strengthening, which could be done just in the gym with exercises, but John loves to walk, right? And he does a lot of walking. So we can just incorporate this in his day and in his and his like uh his current exercises and stuff and things that he likes to do. So it's not like an added thing on top of his activities. So John loves to go for really long walks. He gets like 80 billion steps a day. So I'm like, add some hills, add some stair training in those walking routines where we're really going to get some extra strengthening in his calves. And then we could work on some burst push movements. So um, the muscles don't just work at one speed, right? They work slow and they work fast. So something that I really wanted him to try was things like jumping, skipping, bounding. Now, this isn't for everybody, but for him specifically, getting those quick burst movements would help with his speed. And then that isolation, remember I was saying he's kind of uh there's an asymmetry between left and right with his heel raise. So I suggested to him do things with both legs on the ground and with one leg on the ground so we can isolate the left leg. Because if we're doing with just double, he's going to just keep compensating. I need to get him to use the left leg by itself.
But it's so easy doing double though.
Exactly. But you have to have someone that's going to kick your
So much
butt and tell you that you
easier.
have to do
I
the
can do
harder
the heel
things.
raises double real easy. They go, they both feet go up.
You're like, look how good I am at this. I'm like, wait, do it with one leg. You're like, oh crap.
Yeah, I did. I didn't realize that. So I tried to do one. I mean, I was doing like my obstacle course and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden I started to do one with the left foot only. Went really? It goes nowhere. Like,
I know it's almost like not that I want to break your confidence, but I want to point out to you that
yeah,
we do have weaknesses and that's going to contribute to difficulty. So if we target those weaknesses appropriately, we're going to see big gains. And then finally, just in general, improving ankle strength and stability. Remember what I mentioned with that if you don't have range of motion, if we're hypomobile somewhere, we may be compensating elsewhere with extra mobility causing pain and difficulty, or we just can't get the correct contraction over the joint because we just don't have the movement there. We don't have the ability to move a good amount. So things that I wanted John to try was, strengthening in every direction, isolating those movements where we're not uh basically compensating for a loss. Like for instance, he was walking with his leg coming forward using his hip, right? But if his ankle just did a better job, we wouldn't have to compensate with the hip, which is why I wanted him to do isolated ankle stuff and then also work on just the mobility and the stability within his ankle joint. So that's why I prescribed him with some uneven training. So walking on, well, if he was indoors, a foam mat, the use of a Bosu ball, but also he could do things just like walking in grass, walking on gravel, sand, all different things like that that are going to increase the mobility and and challenge his stability within his ankle and his balance, honestly. And then also just going in multiple directions. A lot of our movements or just exercises that you see online, I'm just gonna stop sharing, are all here, which is like what we call sagittal plane movement. It's bicep curls, it's squats. A lot of the time we don't move this way. We don't rotate during exercise, or we don't do things together. So some of the exercises that if you've seen some of my videos where maybe you're doing a lunge and you're rotating at the same time, or you're doing a chop reverse chop where you're going down and rotating and then up and rotating the other way. Because life doesn't work like this, right? We're not just like robots walking in a straight line. We have to train in all of these different planes of movement where our training looks exactly like real life, so that when real life comes, we don't have pain, we don't have injury, and that we feel strong and confident to do those things. So like people who have difficulty, like so many people want to get back to doing stuff in the kitchen. I'm like, all right, what do you want to do? I'd really like to be able to unload and load the dishwasher. Okay, so the dishwasher's to your side. What are you going to stand in front of the dishwasher and step backwards and open it? No, you're going to reach sideways and down, pull down and back, and then you're going to be taking stuff from the counter, reaching down to the side. So our exercises want to reflect exactly that. Where, I mean, if you go to the gym or you do exercises at home, a lot of them are just single plane where we're moving like this, we're moving here, we're moving forward and back. There's no like, you know, complicated real life movements in there of that rotation and diagonal movement. So that's all incorporated and was suggested to John. And he was one, I mean, you took my advice specifically, worked on it. If he didn't, there'd be no point of me reaching, like telling him any of this, where we wouldn't have seen an improvement if he just went home and said, okay, now I know what's wrong, but they didn't do anything about it, then we weren't going to see the progress that we did. So, if, John, you want to just speak to like kind of what you did do and how you felt like it helped you.
Well, mostly some of the stretches you gave me is what alleviated a lot of the pain in the hip. Um, Laying horizontal, and I pulled the knee up to my chest and really pulled it even tighter up and really stretched the hip out and crossing the knee over, doing the four, like figure four, I call it, and pushing that leg down to get that
Yeah.
hip relaxed. And then once I started using more of my calf muscles, I mean, I hear myself now at work, and my foot slap is very, very minimal. When I'm out walking, my foot slap is very, very minimal. If I'm tired, you will hear it hit a lot harder. But if I'm not
Yeah.
tired, it's more controlled. So doing the squats and the lunges, and I always did across different surfaces. I always did that from the beginning for years back. I've done that from the get go. You know, that's one of George's favorite things to do. And stairs. Stairs are always his favorite too. So I do stairs, and then a lot of stuff I do at work, I push and pull pallets. So I'm trying to turn my body at the same time and push off those toes to rotate to pull this way or rotate to pull this way. But I try to work the left side, which is my fetcher side, even more. So I'll try to go out of my way to go a different direction just to push off that to get the ankle to push the dorsiflexion to push away and then turn and then walk backwards. That's basically pulling a pallet, a 2,000 pound pallet backwards, and actually put my toes down and pushing all the way through the heel and lift my foot back up and do it again. So I don't get run over by the pallet, but to keep pushing the stuff. So I pay attention to the things that you pointed out, which
Yeah.
nobody wants to go to the doctor and hear all the things that are wrong with them. But I want to hear what's wrong. I want to see what's wrong. Where I need to pinpoint to work this stuff out. What I need to do to fix this. I with students, I do the same thing. I want to hear their conversation. I want to hear what they're seeing. And even as minor as it can be, I want to hear what they're seeing. I don't want the big pictures. I don't want the minor stuff because all this minor stuff, to me, you work on all the minor stuff, it takes care of the big picture.
Yeah.
And you pointed out going through different muscle groups, it's like everything else. But me doing the stairs and a lot of working with this leg, I mean, my pain has been minimal. I mean, I've really, ever since we started doing some stretching, within about 2 weeks of me doing those stretches, I had no more pain in the leg. I could do the adduction machines at Planet Fitness. I mean, I'm up to 130 pounds on both. I'm 110 on abduction, 130 on abduction, and no pain. I mean, I couldn't even do 5 pounds. It would fire right away. So it went away just by stretching those muscles out. And I don't know, just it was amazing. Just that simple little thing you showed me just to stretch my quad out, and it helps.
Yeah. And I think you're a perfect example of where more is more, but more isn't always more, where we know he does so much. He's a perfect example of like really being disciplined, really being active, but still running into issues. And then knowing what that exact issue was helped him be able to continue to do what he was doing. So a lot of the times we learn intensity, right? This is something John has learned a lot about and been part of research about, where the more intense something is, the better it is. The more repetitions we do, the better it is. But you know what? People who have had strokes are still people. You have you have muscles, you have bones, you have joints, you have your whole person. You're not just a neurological system, right? So we have all these different things that need to be evaluated and put together, even like vestibularly, or if you have a cerebellar issue, those are going to interact a lot different with movement and problems that you may be experiencing in your everyday life and activities that you're trying to participate in. So making sure that we're looking at it all from uh, a holistic perspective, and then kind of picking out, okay, well, we do have a history of stroke, but we also have a history of this, and these are the things that he likes to do, and this is kind of where he's showing his issues. All of that comes together with the idea and the decision to look at certain things and then prescribe certain exercises or interventions to get him to where he needed to be. So in this moment, John didn't necessarily have to do more. He just needed to do a little different. So the way that he was walking, we can change that. We needed to add in something else to his program so that he could continue with the way that he wanted to. So it wasn't really like that you felt like I was restricting you from movement, John, right? You didn't feel like I was like, no, 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 don't do any of that. It was
No,
like, okay, let's try doing this and then adding in these little extra things to see if you're more able to do the things that you do want to participate in.
I set the ba- I have two 30-degree boards that they were thrown away at work. They were a display, a 30-degree board, and they cut it in half to throw it away. Well, I used that in the basement. Those faces of them are against each other, so I can do bounding from one to the other, almost like you saw the people on
Ninja Warrior.
yeah, how they go from the angle pad to here. And I do it in front of I got this upright freezer in front of me, so I got my hand on the freezer if I need it. But to go from this side to that side, just keep going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I watch my foot plate with this. So I'm not coming down shorter. I'm trying to go longer and higher on the board. And the boards are sitting on carpets. They're not sliding anywhere. They're pretty stout where they land at. But I've not put that back down since the Christmas holiday. I got to put everything back downstairs in the basement again. So I can get back on that. But that was showed also to me at the students at UIndy to do the bounding. We did it on a sidewalk, flat across the sidewalk, and I it was uncomfortable. I mean, the downstairs is not so bad, but I'm doing it in open ground. It's uncomfortable that you're not going to hit, land, and roll an ankle. Granted, one student was on the right of me, one student was on the left of me. They were right there next to me when I landed, but it was working. I mean, I looked at the distance I was actually jumping, and it was working. And
Yeah.
it's that, yeah, like you said, that burst of energy, burst of the muscle groups was wonderful. And it's a feeling once you start doing it, it's like, wow, this is great. Why haven't I done this before? I didn't think I was capable of doing this, but I am because I was pushed a little harder. Um, I'm not one. I mean, luckily, I've not met any therapists along the way, either at the school or actually in therapy, that have restricted me from doing it. Said, hey, don't do this, don't do this. So they'd say, yeah, go try that. And of course, I'd go home and I'd try it, and then I'd take a video and take it back to them and say, here's the video. What do you mean a video? Well, nobody brings us videos. So, well, you told me to try this, so here it is. So, critique what I'm doing, show me what I'm doing wrong, show me what I need to change up, or if everything's good to go, then tell me so. Um, I beg for therapist input to get better. I mean, some people, I want to go physical therapy. I want to go physical therapy. Yeah, I do. I want to go physical therapy. I want the input from these people that have all this knowledge. I want them to show me how to get better. And that's one thing I thrive for all that from the beginning.
Yeah, and I think too, like just that we've remained in contact. So, um, I don't know if anyone has had experiences, like positive experiences, but from a lot of my clients, um, something that they love about working together. I mean, me and John keep in touch all the time, but it's hard when you get sent home with a program, which usually it's not super in depth, but whatever it is, you don't get to really ask any questions, make sure that you're doing it correctly. So when you have that feedback, so like John kept in touch with me. He tried things and then he let me know how was it going. Because say I provided him with those interventions, right? I gave him suggestions. And he's like, Sam, these are not working. We go back to the drawing board and we try to figure out something else because you know what? Something that might help him may not help you. Or maybe I have to give you a different cue or a different setup or something that's going to be easier for you or harder for you because everyone is their individual person, right? So we just want to make sure that there's constant communication because that's where we get things done, right? That's where we're impactful because say you didn't speak to me ever again and the things I gave you to do didn't work for you. What's the point of it, right?
You
Or
you would have said, "What did I do wrong? What did I do to him?"
yep.
You know, well, he's lay up in the hospital with a broken leg because he gave him exercise to do.
Oh God, God forbid. That's why we have liability consents. But yeah, exactly that. Like you just want to make sure that you're still able to get the feedback because if you're not trying it, there's going to be no feedback to share where making sure you have that continuous communication, you're able to kind of chat. This is what worked, this is what didn't work, and then we go back to the drawing board together. It's like, okay, or this is next, check it off the list. All right. So for instance, John's feeling better. Okay, can I start incorporating the jumping? Can I start incorporating the hill walking and blah 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 blah? And it's like, hell yeah. You got to check off like you're feeling good. Like we're not going to end up setting you back. So do it or keep go and try, but make sure you're still doing those stretches and stuff so we don't have a setback.
Right.
So having
And
that constant communication, working as a team has been really nice too.
and you actually had me get on the treadmill and do the get the incline going, which I did. I think it's called rolling hills, is what program's on.
Yeah, that program.
So every 3 to 4 minutes, it changes angle on the treadmill, which is usually not too bad. So you go like 34 minutes in, and you're doing like 3.5, and it decides to go to 9 degrees on the incline. It's like, what? Not 35 minutes of an hour. You want me to do 9 degrees now? I mean, it sucks, but you have to keep your toes up. You have to work harder and you have to keep the speed going, and then all of a sudden you raise up. And about 3 minutes later, it'll drop down to like 1 degree. So you're like, okay, you got a little reprieve, but for it to shoot up that quick and then try to drop down later. But I watch people on the treadmills. They're on the incline on the treadmills, and they're hanging on the bar and they're just leaning back. It's like you guys do nothing more than walking.
Yeah,
You're doing
yeah.
the incline, but
And
doing
it's
the
nice because like you're trying it in a very controlled environment too. So like say you put it at even 2% from 0% and you're having a struggle at 2%. You're gonna tell me what I tried this and it was horrible. We're like, okay, what are we gonna do? How can we change this, right? So like say John tried it and he's like, no, I can't do it right now. Like the 9% is not going the way that I want it to go. Well, why isn't it going the way that you want to go? Do you have to use your arms too much? Do you want to slow down the speed a little bit? Do we need to maybe use not for someone like him, but maybe we need to use an AFO when we're trying something like that. Or maybe we need to hold on with two hands so that we can really challenge the strength in the legs and our endurance and not have to worry so much about our balance, right? So there's all these different ways that we can kind of tweak things so that we are able to challenge your walking and improve the things that we need to improve if we're having struggles with the original recommendations.
that wasn't on your sheet, but that's one recommendation you did give me was to use the rolling hill or get the incline going.
Yep,
But
absolutely.
I mean that helped me a lot right there. I mean, it was really pushing me harder, and I could tell by my heart rate going up and down.
Yeah, yeah.
It really helps get the knees up and not so much drag the foot through, and it actually forces you to push off the toes to get that foot higher on the treadmill because
Yeah, it's like
you can't just drag it up there. You have to push it up there and get it out there. So that knee has to raise up and extend that foot out.
yeah, that's like the automaticity of gait that I was talking about that like you kind of lose when you have a stroke, right? Everything becomes very thoughtful. And then when you just twist the environment a certain way, it kind of forces your body to do something and make the correction without you having to even think about it. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna face plant if I don't lift my foot, so I better lift my foot. And it just happens. That's just like the way that the brain
Yeah, you
so
start scraping,
beautifully works.
scraping your toes, and you worry about, okay, am I going to trip up and fall off this treadmill? No. You're going to start to raise your foot up so it doesn't hit, and you start
Yep,
pushing off. And of course, when you push off, if I remember correctly, my years of running track, when you push off, it pushes all the way through, and that knee goes up. The more you push off, the more you kick up that heel, the higher your knee goes in front for it to be extended.
absolutely.
That's the way I looked at it back there. It's okay, as I push off this knee a little higher, push off the toes, the knee goes higher, and I can actually extend my foot out farther and get that heel strike out there. And at the same time, my foot is raised up higher, my toes are up higher, so that it's an easier. It's not so much of a flat foot hitting, but
Yep,
I get the heel toe strike, and then you get the noise, and then you start to learn to, well, let's slow the noise down. Let's get some more strength in that in the shin so that you're not slapping the foot as much.
absolutely.
But it just
Does
worked
anyone
out.
have any questions or anything that they'd like to add or
Yes, I was doing great until for about 5 years, and then suddenly started to get muscle tightness. Yes, whether it be spasticity or rigidity, I'm not sure. Is there any suggestions for how to improve that?
in your lower body you said?
Oh yes, yeah, the lower body.
Well, I would like to give you suggestions, but it's hard to say like without evaluating you. Um, just because there could be a reason or a specific time that you start to get those. So just kind of like what I evaluated with John, like he was having specific pain at a specific time and a specific activity. So if you were able to, if you want to just send me a message, Chris, about like the specific issues that you're having with like when that tone increases and when the spasticity happens, there are things that I can suggest to you, but some things that can happen are um, making sure that we're doing some really good weight bearing. Weight bearing can reduce spasticity. If we're trying to contract the opposite muscle, so if we're having tightness in like the bicep, trying to use the tricep. So for instance, if you're having tightness in the quads, really working on strength in the hamstrings. Some heat and some nice massage can also reduce it. And then using electrical stimulation on like the current muscle that's in spasm is helpful because it ends up fatiguing the muscle and can release spasticity. But usually what we look for is to see when the spasticity happens and high tone to see like what is triggering it and then targeting that. So a lot of the times it happens because of endurance of the muscle. So we have to work on training the muscle so that the muscle doesn't fatigue as fast because if it doesn't fatigue as fast, then the tone's not going to turn on as fast. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
But you could definitely
thanks.
reach out to me and we could go a little bit more in depth so I could give you like specifics.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Dr. Sam,
Hi,
how you
Tara. How
doing?
are you?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm good.
Um, this might not be exactly something you can answer either, but it's related, and I'll just give you a try. I am 3 years post-stroke, and ever since the whole 3 years, my long distance walking, I used to be an avid walker, not anymore. And I noticed like in big wide open spaces it used to never bother me, like if you're in a park or you park in the last parking spot in a parking spot and there's like no landmarks.
Hmm.
Is there anything I can do with that? Does it have anything to do with gait? And I didn't have a cerebellar one or whatever you call that stroke. I had an ischemic.
An
So
ischemic
I
stroke.
yeah, so I don't know if that gives you enough or what.
Well, sometimes what I would suggest is with something like that, sometimes it has to do with fear or just like experience and being exposed to those things. So say you're having difficulty walking in a completely open space. What I would do is pull it back. So we don't want to go like 0 to 100, right? So say you're comfortable walking in your house, something that may lead to a little bit more discomfort, but not failure, would be walking maybe on the sidewalk or outside your house where it's a little bit more open and but more controlled, where it's you're in a familiar place, there's not many people, where like if you're in a parking lot or if you're at a park, it may be more crowded and it's not as familiar. Or we set up landmarks where it's not as far as a distance. So sometimes I um like in a park, if it's a familiar park to you, we try to walk like landmark to landmark, for instance, like one bench to the other bench, just to expose you to open distance walking. But we have like an escape plan or an end spot where you're able to rest in between. So there's like a very slow exposure of grading from like being very, very comfortable, nice closed environment, familiar environment with lots of areas to take a rest or to lean if you need, to the most challenging, which would be like a completely open field. Does that make sense?
Yes, but how would I be able to do that by myself? Who would I find to help me?
So, so you would want to start slow in your own home and in an area where you have the ability to walk a specific distance. So I wouldn't go a distance that you're unable to walk right now, or a place where you don't have help. Um, that's too difficult for you right now. So for instance, if you at your home or in your like say you're able to walk like maybe 2 minutes before you need to rest. It could even be a minute before you need to rest. We pick a time that's a little bit less than that. So we know that you will be successful. And we set up a place for you to sit at the end of that. So say you're able to walk for 2 minutes without difficulty. And that's really when you start getting tired. We'll pull it back to maybe a minute and a half. And let's say I'm going to have you walk outside of your house down like the sidewalk and come back to your house almost like a loop and then sit when you get there, so that we're exposing you to an open environment, but we have a plan to safely sit and um, be safe before we're able to push you out into something that's more difficult, so that we wouldn't like make you do something that would be unsafe where you wouldn't have help or somewhere to sit without doing uh the steps before that.
Yeah, I really wish I could find somebody to help me. I can even mow now. I do that, but then that's in your yard and you have your house, it's not, I mean, it's open, but it's not wide open, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
I wish that would have people that would give us therapy for real life, like you just said, instead of, some of us, that's all we're ever going to be able to do is walk in our house. But but others of us that would like to get back as much as possible. And even if it means I can only walk half the park, I would love, that's my dream is to walk to my favorite park again. But it's
No.
got hills, it's not the safest.
Yeah, yeah. Well, then there's also other options of like seeing what you have access to. And if you have family members or friends or a place in the community that could be safe where there are people, where it's not like you're all just solo walking in a like a scary, quiet parking lot all by yourself. Um, a lot of the times I recommend like walking around Target or walking in Costco, where like we know where seats are and there's a lot of people. Or using a device like I don't know what your like upper extremity strength is like, but like things like a rollator or having a transport wheelchair with you as your pushing device, so that you're basically carrying a seat with you everywhere you go. So there are ways that I do suggest to the clients that I work with so that we can work towards these things. If you
I
would
think you
like,
just gave me an idea. Yeah.
all right,
Whoops,
good. So
I
if you
muted
want,
myself. Yeah, I have a rollator. eh, And then when I get tired, I feel like I could almost just try it myself. So, yeah, thanks for the idea.
you're welcome. You're welcome.
That's perfect.
All right, I'm about needing to go. So if anyone else has any questions,
Yeah.
um you can send a, oh, okay, I see Musang. Go ahead. I have 2 more minutes.
Okay, no problem. So, just real quick, I just wanted to tell you, like, even with everybody's different levels of walking and gait stuff, going on, but the best way I can describe with my info on is a bouncy house, like walking in a bouncy house.
Hmm.
And that's really the biggest issue that I have. Right now, I'm walking in the pool, because I have a lot of inversion issues, and I'm walking in the pool, but it's not very elegant at all. It still feels like I'm in a bouncy house, even walking in the pool. Because right now, my foot just kind of rolls down a little bit, but there's no activation at all. So my
Yeah.
question is, do I just keep doing that and walking, not in the pool, more on a hard surface? Would that continue to? Because I'm in such a
Um,
weird spot moving from my current AFO to my next evolution in AFO. It's very difficult to understand.
yeah, so I mean it would require further evaluation, like very specific evaluating of like what your sensory gaps would look like. So like why you're feeling like walking in a bouncy house and what would give you the feeling like would kind of fill that information for you where you wouldn't feel so off balance, where the information that you're getting from the water could actually be making that sensation worse. So it depends really on what would be helpful for you to feel that. So it can kind of go through a lot of trial and error. Um, Sometimes people feel better with shoes on, something rigid, or getting better stability in their eyes or vestibular system. There's all different ways that you can be provided with different sensory information that will stop making you have that feeling of walking in a bouncy house. So for you, the pool just may be something that isn't your cup of tea. It could be someone else's cup of tea that helps them, but maybe it's just not yours, where you would kind of have to go through a bunch of different trial and error to see maybe it's a shoe that's going to help me. Maybe it's a specific type of environment, or like uh different ways that you're going to stabilize your head and neck. So there's all these different ways that like you can kind
Yeah,
of
I
go
don't think,
through a trial and
just to
error.
kind of clarify, I have pretty good balance. I have pretty good balance. I'm not worried about my balance at all. And
Okay.
my
Yeah,
endurance is good.
sometimes, yeah, even
It's
if
more about just like I guess no control over like the landing of the heel or the rolling of the foot being flat, because I can't push off at all.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
my
so
my
we would
thing
have to
is
like
like,
look a little bit more in depth about like really why you're having that sensation. And um sometimes we can provide different types of information that are going to help with that sensation. And it's really like a big trial and error, and there's a bunch of different ways that we can provide you with that. It would just be like we really would have to do like a formal evaluation, but I would try something like different shoe wear, stabilizing your gaze, like looking at a target as you're walking. Maybe holding on or using like a compression device over the foot to give the information that you may need. So there's all these different things that we can use sensory wise that can maybe give you better information about where you are in space, where you don't feel like you're walking that way.
okay, let me ask you this. As far as inversion goes, trying to alleviate that or kind of progress with that, what do you feel like just walking on hard surface? If I'm able to do that and just make it roll down flat, would that help?
It would all
Just
depend
with
on
that
why the
particular,
inversion. It would really all
yeah.
depend on like why the inversion is happening. So like sometimes inversion is happening due to like spasticity and tone, or it could be due to like just structural position of your foot, where sometimes we want to um provide like an AFO or an orthotic. Sometimes it can be due to weakness, where we want to really strengthen the everters of the foot to kind of balance it out. So it would depend, but those are all different kind of avenues for the inversion.
But do you think just walking though, would still help with that? The way,
It's hard to say just because I don't know the cause of it.
okay.
So for some people, like walking could be helpful, but it may be that, remember how I was saying to John before, like sometimes more isn't more, where like if the walking isn't like specifically targeting the issues that we have, then we would have to go back to the drawing board and pick something else out.
Mm. yeah, that's a very topical, difficult situation that I'm in, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. But I would love to talk to all of you on an individual basis if you'd like. Um, I'm gonna just give, just before I have to jump off of here, if you ever are interested in like a consult, I do talk about I usually do like what are called like free discovery calls where we can talk about your difficulties and see if like the programs that I do provide would be helpful for you, where like it could be a gait analysis like that John underwent, or actually participating in my program with me, where we would be able to really pinpoint all of the difficulties that you have and target it in a specific program for you. So if anyone is interested, you can just shoot me an email or reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram, and we can get started chatting because I would love to give you all the individual assistance that's needed.
Yeah. Okay.
Quickly, I want to thank Dr. Sam for all her input and taking time out of her day for an
Thank
hour and
you.
a half to do this. Much appreciated. I,
Of
I,
course, of course.
I bow to you, okay? Because you're
Thank
you're
you,
knowledgeable.
everyone.
Thanks a lot.
I'll have to come back again soon. I'll talk to you all soon.
All right,
All
thanks,
right,
Sam.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.